are back. We are being joined by the chairman of the board of Hospice Care of the Lowcountry, Janet. We are so thrilled to have you here. I happen to be a devotee and a huge advocate for Hospice Care of the Lowcountry. I think you do an absolutely amazing job.
I agree.
Oh, thank you.
And you know what's interesting? I think we all have a preconceived notion about hospice. And I think one of the things that you do an amazingly good job at is educating us about hospice. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about preparing for the end of life. When do we do that? How do we do this? What does it look like?
Well, you know, the notion of preparing for end of life should start very young, not at end of life. The notion that you've had a conversation with the people you love about what matters to you and about how you want to be treated at end of life should happen with a 19-year-old who's riding around on a motorcycle without a helmet.
Okay.
And there's something called the Conversation Project that advocates that these conversations happen over events like even Thanksgiving dinner, so that people know this about each other, because we not only have people who face end of life over long protracted illnesses where you're able to have a conversation, but have tragic things happen where the family wants to honor and do the right thing and doesn't know what the person's wishes are.
Talk to me about language, because I think sometimes positioning things and having the words and language to express it is the key to opening a conversation. What are your recommendations?
Well, it's interesting you should say that. One of the questions that people say is that so often people say, "What's the matter with you?" Oh. And instead what you should be asking is, Grandma, Bob, whoever, what matters to you?
Oh.
Because what I like to say is that the medical field has medicalized the end-of-life process, and it's all about, do you want a feeding tube or a ventilator? The legal profession has legalized it and made about how do you want to distribute your assets, when really it's the end-of-life process is a social process where you need to know what matters to the person you love, that they want to reconcile with their brother, that they're concerned about who's going to care for their cats, that they really want to make sure that their garden is taken care of after they pass. So the conversation should really be about what matters to the person so that you can honor their wishes, because that's really what we want to do for people we love.
That's correct.
Do you think opening the conversation allows us to even have a conversation within our own hearts and minds?
Oh, I think it does, because what we find, particularly with older people, is that the studies show that they want to have the conversation, and they oftentimes even start the conversation with loved ones, with children, with grandchildren, and they shy away from it. Oh, Grandma, you're going to be fine. There's no reason to have this conversation. And so it's really it's kind of a taboo subject to talk about that. So people shy away from it.
Is that a cultural thing here?
It is a cultural thing. That's where we ought to lean in. That whole notion of leaning in is when that door gets opened, you ought to rush right through it and say, yes, Grandma, let's talk about that.
Wow.
And I agree with you there. You said something about the grandmother leans over, the granddad leans over and starts talking about it, and the young person doesn't want to.
Shuts it down.
They shut it down.
Yeah.
So really, it's the younger generation who's shutting that down because they don't want to talk about it and maybe even face their own mortality.
Right,
and you said it needs to start earlier.
Right.
I agree with that 100%.
Well, let's talk about the mission statement of philosophy of hospice in general. And what is it? Is it death with dignity? Is it talking about quality of life? Is it being able to engage in these somewhat difficult conversations with grace?
But you said it at the beginning, it really is death with dignity. And that's what drew me to this. I took courses on death and dying in college. My friends thought I was nuts. I was 19 years old. And they said, did somebody die? And I said, no, and I realized that it was really about treating people with dignity throughout their life. And so it really is about listening closely to what does the family want, and what does the person who's ill or dying want, and then honoring those wishes.
How do we open up the conversation, or you gave specific things, who's going to take care of the cat, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. What do you find in your history that are topics or things that really are interesting to most people that they're afraid to talk about, that they're not sure? Is it the way they want to be I guess I'm thinking, do they want to be buried or cremated or
Right.
this or that or the other, or?
Well, you know, one of the things that concerns people the most is, are they going to suffer?
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
thank you.
Are they going to suffer?
Absolutely.
And so tell me medically what's going to happen. How am I going to feel? And one of the things that hospice does is manage the symptoms.
Okay.
Hospice does many other things, like
Yeah.
really help with the bereavement process. But they are experts at symptom management, whether it's constipation or, pain in your left hip. That's what hospice care really is about. It's really about making the person comfortable through the end of life.
And then from the family system point of view, what do they do? Because I've seen them with education that's amazing.
Well, we do everything from support the loved ones to understand what's going to happen and prepare them to be supportive, to holding weddings for people who are dying at end of life, to bringing pets in. So we do anything that brings people joy at end of life.
Is hospice something that can begin once a week, once a month, and then incrementally increase as the needs of both caretakers, families, and clients increase?
Sure. When we get a call, the first thing we do is do an assessment.
Okay.
And and the care plan is really customized to that particular family. And the earlier people call in the process, if somebody's been told they have 6 months to live, the earlier we get there, the less regular visits are needed. So it could be that we would stop in once a week, but it progresses more as the patient's needs increase and the family needs increase.
So bringing it full circle, and then I know we have to go here on the senior channel, is basically what you're saying is open the dialogue before there's a need, and perhaps something like hospice can be incorporated in that care plan before we need a care plan. It makes a lot of
Absolutely.
sense. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Senior Network. Have a great week.